Hello lovely humans and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would tell you about some of my favourite books that aren't Harry Potter. I kind of had this idea because I was thinking, especially at the minute, kind of about comfort reads and what sort of books make me feel comfortable and what books and what characters I go to like have a good time with. I know I love the writing, I know I love the characters, I know I love the story. And obviously for so many people Harry Potter springs to mind instantly, but I thought instead of just talking about Harry Potter, I would tell you about some great books that I love that aren't Harry Potter. So let's get into it. So the first book that I want to talk about is probably one that is on everybody's list, and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This story follows the tale of Evelyn Hugo and a young upcoming journalist called Monique. And Monique is suddenly called to do this big kind of newspaper or magazine cover with Evelyn Hugo, who has become a bit of a recluse. She's an old-fashioned 1950s film star. She's very well known, think old Hollywood, and Monique is the person that Hugo's agent asks for. And it turns out that Monique is actually there to tell Evelyn's life story. And Monique sits there, she goes daily, and Evelyn retells her life story to Monique. It's a little bit more complex than that, however I think the less you know the better. This story is beautiful, the characters are so real. Taylor Jenkins Reid has this like kind of habit, or just this like knack for writing characters that feel so real. Like, I then wanted to like Google Evelyn Hugo and see pictures of her in the iconic green dress on the cover. I wanted to see and watch the films that Evelyn Hugo had been in. And I just kind of feel that she does this with quite a few characters. She manages to write such raw and quite just like real characters. You think that they're real people, and it's amazing. This book obviously got so much hype on BookTube last year, and I know that it's full deserved of the hype. This book is amazing. I really want to reread it. I only read it last year, and the second I finished it I wanted to reread it, and I always think that is a good sign of a good book. The next book is All My Friends Are Superheroes by Andrew Kaufman. This is a really short little number, and it is a really kind of out there, a little bit like magical realism experimental book, and it is literally about a guy who has friends that are all superheroes, and he goes through all his friends and he kind of like talks to you about their powers, about their lives, and how he's not a superhero. And this book just captured me. It had so much character. It's been a couple of years since I've read it, and I think I'm due for a reread. I just loved it. Like, it got my heart. It made me feel like the characters are real, and for such a short book, I think it's like less than 200 pages, it really packed a punch, and I think about it so often. And considering I only spent like half an hour reading it, I think about this book so often. This was a recommendation that I got from Carrie Hope Fletcher, and I picked it up and I was like, this is amazing. This book, it was just so good, and it's one that I don't hear many people talk about, but I think it definitely deserves more hype than it gets. And I think it's such a creative, different, and such like short kind of novella-y story, and it is so good. The next book I thought I'd throw in is a non-fiction book, and I talk about this book very often on my channel, and that is Everyday Sexism by Laura Bates. This is a collection of anecdotes, quotes, not stories as such, but experiences of women and how they've experienced sexism, abuse, trauma because they are female. And Laura Bates has managed to collate all of these experiences from a project that started on Twitter, I think, and collate it into such a dignified, heart-wrenching, heartwarming book. It is so good. It is the best, probably, piece of feminist non-fiction I've ever read, and I think that it's so good, and I also think that it should be probably essential reading for all gender studies people, just because she categorises it into different types of sexism. And until I read this, I didn't realise that some of the things that I would experience in my day-to-day life were actually sexism, that is just so ingrained into society that we don't even know that it's sexism. We don't even know as women that it's not okay, and we are being conditioned to think that this sexism is okay. Seriously, it packs a punch. Sometimes it's very difficult to read, but I actually really think that it's so good, and it's probably my favourite non-fiction book of all time, which is why it is on this list. This book is a cutie and a BookTube classic, and that is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. This follows the story of two twins, and they go to university together, and it's about how Kath, the one twin, kind of finds her way and struggles to find her way as she's going to university. And Kath is very, very well known for writing fanfiction for a particular series called the Simon Snow series. The Simon Snow series, which is actually now a real series that exists, and I also love that. It's very, very parallel to Harry Potter, and it's kind of like, it's basically the Harry Potter of that world. What I loved about this is I loved that, number one, it was set in university. I find that quite a lot of YA, whether it's American YA, whether it's British YA, it's kind of based in high school, and I love to read YA, and I'm 23, and I sometimes feel a little bit too removed from the characters because there's a substantial age difference between me and these characters in school now. And I really, really enjoyed this new approach that Rainbow Rowell took, that it was kind of based in a university. I also loved Kath's character and the way that she kind of came into her own and really kind of grew up throughout the story. And I thought that was so, so good. And I just love the romance. I love the romance. It's so cushy, it's so warm, it gives you all the fuzzy feelings. And I also kind of loved the Harry Potter Simon Snow element, and it like made my day when Rainbow Rowell made the Simon Snow series a real thing. Carry On and Wayward Son, so good. But it's a really like kind of nice contemporary fluffy vibe. So the next one is actually a really, really recent read for me, and that is Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. Oh boy. This book just took me completely by surprise. I honestly didn't expect to love it as much as I did. Story of Bryce. And I think it's really hard for me to explain the plot of this book because something really, really shocking happens in the first 60 pages of the book that changes the whole perspective of the book. So in short, Bryce lives in a world where there are factions, depending on your magical ability, and a world, it's so hard to describe. I really, really struggle to describe it. But basically, angels and demons, witches, werewolves, magical high society, fae, magical powers. That is all you need to know. I think you really need to read it, and especially because the first spoiler happens so early on in the book, and it is, I went into it completely blind and I found it completely shocking, but I also think that it kind of helped that reading experience for me. So maybe you too. I feel like that was a really ridiculous book. Crescent City, read it. It's so good. I honestly think that it's the best fantasy book I've read in a while. I am waiting for Sarah J. Maas to come out with the next one. I don't know if that'll be anytime soon, but I am desperately, desperately waiting. The next kind of series I'm going to say is a group of graphic novels, and that is the Heartstopper series by Alice Oseman. This follows, it's like a spin-off of her first book, Solitaire. It follows the characters Nick and Charlie from her first book, and it is all about them growing up, being together as a couple and falling in love and being gay. That is basically it, but it's so much more. It is just amazing. Alice Oseman manages to write the most beautiful, inclusive, wonderfully drawn, wonderfully written stories, and I definitely feel like volume 3, it just explored kind of so many different perspectives and explored the spectrum of people that we have in this society, because 9 times out of 10 when you read a book, it's kind of like, oh yeah, just like boy meets boy, or girl meets girl, or girl meets boy. And you don't get to explore the spectrum of people and the amazing, beautiful, wonderful spectrum of queerness that is in society. Whereas Alice Oseman addresses that so beautifully and just so dignified. It is phenomenal. The art style is beautiful. It originally obviously started as a webcomic, and Alice was fortunate enough to be able to get it kickstarted, which is amazing, and now we're on our 3rd volume, and I love it. I just love it. It gives me all the feel-good vibes. They're a quick read, but I can also reread them quickly, and I just love them. They are so good. I recommend them to anybody, and I also think that they should be in school libraries because I think they could be really valuable to teenagers who are exploring their sexuality, because I know when I was reading books I could not see myself reflected in the pages of the books I was reading, and for the first time ever, especially in YA, we are suddenly getting an influx of characters that look, feel, love the way we actually might in society, rather than these awkward cardboard cutout societal figures that have been in YA in the past. Characters are flawed, but I just love it, and Alice Oseman is a true representation of that, and I love her books. The last book that I'm going to talk about is I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zuzak. Now, anybody who knows me well will know that Markus Zusak is famous for The Book Thief. Book Thief is like one of my least favourite books at all time. I hate The Book Thief. However, I Am the Messenger is absolutely phenomenal. It follows the story of a young guy who keeps receiving letters, and he follows the trail of these letters to like an end. It's been a couple of years since I read it, but I just remember this guy in the story just feeling so real. He was an illegal taxi driver. It's based in New York. I love books that are based in New York, if you don't already know. And it's just so good. Like, I feel like it's been quite so long since I've read it that I'm a bit like, it's just good because I remember it being really good. But it is honestly kind of like the most raw, the most weird, the most great tale ever. And it's about kind of what life is. And it causes this main character to question what he might want in life and like put him out of his comfort zone and put him into a new routine, because this guy literally kind of was an illegal taxi driver. That's what he thought he was going to do until he died. That sort of thing. And it's all about what the meaning of life is and what the meaning of adventure is. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really want to reread it soon. I need to actually get myself a copy because I don't have a copy. And I just loved it. It is so good. And I often feel because it was written a few years ago, it actually falls off a lot of people's radars. But it is 100% worthy of your time. Even if you didn't like The Book Thief, you might like this. I haven't read Markus Zusak's other book, Bridge of Clay, so maybe I'll like that too, but it is completely different in writing style to The Book Thief. And maybe if you really like The Book Thief, you might not like this, but I honestly think that it's such a real, raw story that you'll love it. So those are, I think, my cohesive list of favourite books at the moment. Obviously this always changes as I'm reading more books, as I think about more books, as I reread more books. This changes. However, I think at the minute we kind of need books that we gravitate towards, books that make us feel good, and books that are like an escapism into an infinite reality of worlds that we can't experience. And I think that is the magic of reading, and we all need that right now. So let me know in the comments down below what your favourite book is at the minute. Have you read any of these? I'd really like to know, especially Crescent City. I need people to talk about Crescent City with. But let me know in the comments down below what you think. If you enjoyed this video, maybe give it a like and subscribe. I would love to have you here on my little small booktube family. But stay lovely, enjoy the sunshine, and I will see you again soon. Goodbye.